The birth of Fender is one of the most interesting stories in the history of guitar manufacture, and it's been told many times. But there's another story, equally as compelling as the birth of Fender in the early 1950s, and that's the rebirth of Fender in the early 1980s. The guitar business was doing pretty well throughout the 1970s, but several things came together in the late 70s and certainly in the early 80s that were tough on Fender. First of all, the import guitars were getting better and better. Next, there was this lingering stigma, the pre-CBS guitars. For a long time, the hippest thing you could own was a new Fender. Now, the hippest thing you could own was an old Fender. There was the rise of this whole vintage guitar market, this mentality of old guitars as collectibles, and people were spending hundreds and hundreds, thousands of dollars for old Strats and old Telecasters. Then there was the general economic downturn that hit in about 1981. Finally, by 1984, CBS had had enough, and they announced that Fender was going on the block.
CBS decided to get out of the entire music business. And we were the first ones to go. We were the most attractive, they thought. But we went through a series of downsizing the factory, shutting down, talking to anybody that thought they had 50 cents in their pocket to buy Fender, coming in, nosing into the books and trying to find out. And it was a very demoralizing time. And trying to hold enough workforce together to keep it operating until we could sell it or dissolve it. And there was talk of just dissolving the company.
And a lot of these guys really weren't serious. They just wanted to find out what was going on. And at first, in the middle of '84, they did not offer it so it could be an employee buyout. It wasn't until November or December of '84 that they finally said, well, listen, we're not getting any offers from anybody else. So let's, you know, if you guys can come up with an offer that's better than liquidation, then we'll sell it to you.
Well, they thought it was great because they were going to get off the hook. They were going to save a little bit of image by not dissolving the company, and they were very cooperative. They did everything they could do to help me buy the company. At the very last moment, they lent me $2.5 million, I believe.
The sale of Fender, continuing the tradition, by Tom Wheeler. After months of rumors, speculation, and negotiations, the long wait may finally be over. I was the editor of Guitar Player from 1981 to 1991, and during the middle part of the 80s, one of the biggest stories we were covering was the fate of Fender. Now, there was a press conference on February 1st, 1985, at an industry trade show. And I remember going to there, I remember the atmosphere in the room. It was, frankly, a mix of cautious optimism and uncertainty, because everybody was pulling for Fender, but we didn't really know if this new team could pull it off. They had a couple of important announcements to make that day. One was that they were going to downsize the company, which seemed like a pretty good idea, because it seemed that Fender had gotten too big, too bulky, too unresponsive to the needs of its customers. The other announcement was that while some of the guitars, the top-end vintage reissue guitars, would be made on American soil, the rest of them would be imported from Japan.
After Bill and his group of investors purchased the company, it was real lean. I mean, those of us were left maybe 100 employees out of 800 and some. Saw a lot of our friends and coworkers leave. A lot of uncertain times in the future. At that point, we had no manufacturing facility in the States, so we were bringing in strictly 100% import product from Japan. My job at that point, I was a senior design engineer for research and development, had gotten to the point to where I was writing service manuals and doing artist relations. There was basically no design work left.
We bought the name. We bought what we thought we were going to be a distribution company, because we had this fine line of guitars from Fuji Gengaki in Japan. We were looking for some amplifiers somewhere to buy, and we were just going to sell the name, and we were doing well for the first month or so. However, the Big Seven got together and had a meeting, and that's when the yen started to rise. And at that time, we knew that we had better make some plans for the future in manufacturing.
This looks like a Stratocaster. It is a Stratocaster. It's an American-made Stratocaster. But it has a dozen or 2 dozen refinements over the original. It represents the commitment by Fender to get back to basics. We're going to get back to quality, we're going to fine-tune, but we're going to produce guitars that people who have been playing Fenders their whole lives are going to be perfectly comfortable playing, and they're going to have all the latest developments.
So more and more the dealers are saying, hey, we want American-made guitars. Fender's an American-made company. Where 6 or 8 months before, they didn't want any American-made guitars, you know. But now, because the yen-dollar relationship had changed, the Japanese prices started to creep up to where they felt they should be getting an American-made product for that money. So within 18 months, by the time we opened the factory, we went from 7 units a day to 150 units a day. It was at a great expense as far as we had to use any, we had to reinvest whatever money we were making to be able to make that take place. It was, we had to hire a lot of people, we had to train a lot of people. We didn't want to make any of the mistakes that were made in the past. So it was a very difficult time. And so at that point in time, we sat down and we designed a product that we felt would be easy for the plant to make and would be what everybody wanted. And that was the American Standard Stratocaster as we know it today. That was George Blanda and myself that did that design. So little by little, we started to rebuild the company. Now, in October of '85, we opened up manufacturing out here in Corona, California, in 14,000 square feet, in an area now where I think we probably have a couple 100,000 square feet. In fact, maybe even more than that. But at that point in time, we had everything in there. And our goal was we were going to get up to making about 10 or 15 guitars a day. And we had a 5-year plan that at the end of 5 years would be up to 150 guitars a day.
We pretty much had the doors open to us. We could do anything we wanted to, and with what had been started when I came in here, I could see that there was a lot of potential, both from the standpoint of making good product, but also in being ingenious in the way we make things. There weren't any books written, there weren't any things to do, there wasn't a basic plan to follow. It was, we need instruments, we need them of this quality, we need them of this design, and we need this many of them. And that story hasn't changed since I've been here in the last 7 years. Every year we have produced more guitars. We've produced better guitars. We've produced a wider variety of guitars. I think when I started, we had 5 basic models and 8 colors per model, about 40 different models that we produced out of this facility. Today we're producing, I think, 41 or 42 different models out of this facility with 8 or 10 colors per model, so do the math. I buy my wood seasoned, kiln dried, ready to make into a guitar from my mills. When the wood comes in, the only thing I have to do at that point is fabricate it, glue it together, let it age with the glue so it stabilizes. The body woods are basically alder, poplar, a species called punk ash, which is Louisiana swamp ash. The body's only got 12 operations that it goes through. Most of that is through NC routing today. In the old days, one of the things that made Fender unique was the fact that each one of them was a little bit different and had a little bit of character. What we've tried to do here is take the best of the character that was available, design that into the instrument, and then through technological advances, the NC routing of the computer-aided design and all of the things we do that take out the routine, difficult tasks and put them into the product to the point that we have a very good, consistent product versus in the old days, those things that made them different were things, mostly production problems. Before it goes into paint, has 41 different operations that have to go on. All of them are measured within thousandths of an inch. When that piece comes in, the first thing we do is check the moisture content and make sure it's ready to process. And we buy 2. We buy a blank for maple neck. We buy a different thickness blank for the rosewood. And basically from that point on, it's our hands-on of planing, milling, routing, assembly, gluing, fret installing, and finishing that gets it into a guitar neck. Out, we really turn it over to the hand craftsmen again. Those are the guys who sand and shape and do the final before paint. When they go into paint, the process really starts over again. It's a separate department and a separate environment for us. In the painting process, the number one thing we try and do is stabilize the wood so that it doesn't come into play again in the future of the instrument. We've instrument and the customer is looking for, and at the same time are cost effective for us to carry through the process. Once they're in final assembly, we go through then the assembly operation with the electronics being fabricated and installed to the guitars. The hardware, the tuning gears, bridge, and all the accessories are then mounted. The neck is matched to the body. And finally, a tuner tester, who is a player, is given the instrument for final setup and checkout. We set up each instrument to a specification that we hope satisfies the average player. When he picks a guitar up at a music store, we feel that he should be able to pick that instrument up and play it to his satisfaction. There are nuances. Everyone likes a little different feel, a little different setup, maybe different strings. But what we want to give the customer is first feel of a Fender guitar is, that feels good. And I think that's one of the things we've done in this factory that has helped our reputation considerably. We spend a lot of time and a lot of attention to detail to make sure when that case is first opened at the customer's store that they are satisfied with it.
Action's good, I'll check the height of the pickups. Okay, and the last thing I get to do is play it. Make sure it plays good.
You know, a key aspect of Fender's success has always been its relationship with artists, not just in terms of marketing and public relations, but in terms of guitar design. From the beginning, guitar players would come in and say, I'd like to see this kind of detail, here's a little modification of the design that I'd like to see, and the factory would endeavor to meet those needs. Working with artists is still a key part of Fender's success today. Eric Clapton might come in and say, you know, I love the Stratocaster, it's my favorite guitar, but ideally I would have a slightly different neck. Or maybe if I could take a feature from this Stratocaster and a feature from that Stratocaster and put them together, that would be my ideal guitar. Fender still works with artists today in the custom shop to meet their needs. Once in a while, they'll say, let's take that Eric Clapton Stratocaster, or the Richie Sambora Stratocaster, or the Bonnie Raitt, or the Jerry Donahue Telecaster, and through the factory, let's offer it to the guitar player on the street. So he or she can go into the music store and say, I want a guitar exactly like Eric Clapton's, exactly like Richie Sambora's, or Jeff Beck's, or Bonnie Raitt's.
Today, it's more important than ever to have the artist involved in that research and development. The artist will come into the custom shop, sit with the master builder, and try to determine not only what product is best for them, but they like to push the envelope. You know, what's new, what can we develop to not only for the artist's needs, but you know, eventually it gets to the marketing department, it gets to the production side of it. When the artist loves that instrument. He's out playing it. He's talking about it. We get requests. I mean, it's as easy as a new pickup that Jeff Beck uses, and we made one pickup for Jeff Beck, and I was getting calls from artists. What's that new pickup? What is that? Where do you guys offer that yet? Well, we didn't at the time, but we were working on developing that as part of our product line. So we always look to the artist for that.
I needed something to play heavy rock and roll to encompass my earlier styles, because when I play live in that kind of situation, I need to have that. So I put in a super distortion humbucker in the back, a Floyd Rose locking tremolo unit to give me all the stuff that I need to do from, like, you know, 70s, 80s. And I put a couple Texas Special pickups, which is like Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of clean blues pickup, in the two front position pickups. I opened the pots up to a different dB, so when I can roll off, say, the volume or tones down to 5, it still gives you a very, very open ring. I use bigger frets, much like a fret that jumbo fret that was probably you might find on a Les Paul or a Gibson or something like that. So the neck playability is a little bit easier. I took the finish off the neck because the finish always, when I'm sweating, always kind of made me stick, you know, in a live situation. I did a cut off to back a little bit so you can get actually a little bit higher on the guitar. And I added a circuit for me when I play in a live situation. Sometimes when you're on stage, you're not getting enough sustain or something like that. So what I did was put in a little bit of a dB boost, like a 10 dB boost on a little switch there. So if I need a little bit more stutch, I call it one day, hit the dB boost. You know, and that just happens on different situations. So I made a few changes to it. They're making a quality instrument. They have models for young players that are affordable, and they're still quality. You know what I mean? They stay in tune. There's a pride in the factory. Everybody that works there they're psyched. People, you know, I go visit the factory a lot.
If you buy a stock guitar, you pretty much walk into a music shop and try the different models and try to find one that you like. If you go into a custom shop, you use your mind to find one you like. You dream up what you'd like and have it built. You can get into it as deeply as you like. How many winds you want the pickups to be, what you want the body to weigh, the density of the wood. You can get a clear, straight grain piece maybe you want, or bird's eye, or whatever it may be. And one guy is building that guitar for you on his bench. The Fender Custom Shop is like going to like a small luthier builder, only they're all under the umbrella and they have the resources available to them of Fender, and they're building Fender guitars.
You know, a lot of companies for years and years would build custom instruments. If you were a big enough star or just had a big enough bank account, they'd build anything you wanted. But Fender was one of the first of the modern companies to actually institute a custom shop. And the custom shop has a very interesting and important relationship to the general factory. On the one hand, it's the place where artists and other players can have instruments built to their individual specifications. Sometimes these instruments might combine features from production guitars. Sometimes these instruments are pretty wacky or whimsical. But the shop is also kind of a proving ground or a testing ground for the general factory. They get so much feedback from artists and ordinary players in the custom shop, and sometimes that feedback is passed along to the factory. Sometimes the ideas
The custom shop actually started to be talked about back in CBS era even. You know, we always felt there was a need for that because in research and development, myself and also the two model makers that worked with me always built custom guitars for artists. Not a lot, but you know, an artist would call and say, geez, I really like that guitar, but I want it bound and painted pink. Well, you know, we do that out of R&D as kind of a perk to our artists.
When I first met John, it was in 1979, and I made my first visit, I guess, down to Fender. It was the second year of popularity of the cars, and it takes a couple of years for things to sort of catch up with you, and I was into the place where I wanted to investigate some nice new guitars, and we were both in our early 20s, and he was working under Freddie Tavares in the R&D department, And I always remember those days, like that was the first custom shop, only they didn't know it was a custom shop. Well, then he left for a while, and for a couple of years, and came back to it. And I guess around '82 is when the vintage reissues started appearing. And that was great for me because that created sort of a base model that I could use to jump off from. Now they were making 57 and 62 type Strats and 54 type Tellys. So John, as long as you're making a 52 Telly in butterscotch with a black pickguard, can you make me a 57 one in Fiesta Red with a single layer white pickguard? Well, I don't see why we can't do that. We've got the Fiesta paint from the 62 Strats, and we've got single layer white plastic from the 57 Strats. We can cut it out on the Telly custom shop starts.
We hand-built all the guitars that we did. In fact, it took us 6 months just to get the shop set up. I believe the first guitar we shipped was in June of 1987. And we would build a few guitars a month. Everything by hand. Used a lot of the old tooling that we had left over from Fullerton, the old, steel pin router plates and everything else. Hand fretting all the guitars, hand shaping the necks, selecting our own woods, buying in special woods at a, woodchuck guys that come by in their pickup trucks and, bring a couple pieces of wood down from up north and we'd buy them. So yeah, it's just started with the two of us with a real dinky little shop right in the middle of the factory.
Custom shop was a way to look and explore what do musicians want today that we didn't see in the 70s and 80s when we kind of lost our marketplace. And the custom shop was able to look at that, ask individuals what they want. Again, you learn from the musicians. Even though I'm making Leo Fender's guitars, I'm still making Leo Fender's guitars from an interpretation of a customer, which is I love a Stratocaster, but I need a humbucker here. I'm using a Marshall amp or a Fender Twin, and this style of music I need a humbucker. Or I love a Fender guitar, but I want a different tuning machine, or I want a different fret, or a fretboard radius because my playing style is such. And that's the beauty of the custom shop. It's Leo's basic concept of a fundamentally accessible guitar, but with whatever changes you need as an individual.
In the custom shop, one person is building that guitar. And so you can call that person and say, I have a little idea that I'd like to try, and have someone to bounce off of. Just say, well, do you think I'm shooting myself in the foot, or will that work, or, is this a good idea? Whatever winds of pickups. I mean, you can get into it as deeply as you like. How many winds you want the pickups to be, what you want the body to weigh, the density of the wood. You can get a clear, straight grain piece maybe you want, or bird's eye, or whatever it may be. And one guy is building that guitar for you on his bench. So, in a sense, the Fender Custom Shop is like going to like small luthier, builder, only they're all under the umbrella and they have the resources available to them of Fender, and they're building Fender guitars.
Guitar is going to speak for itself by the way it looks and the way that it feels.
So we go through an interview system when somebody orders a guitar.
I gotta have that.
And try to take what we consider artistic and manufacturing values and put it into player's values.
And it's a silver sparkle Strat. The entire guitar is silver sparkle, front, back of the neck, everything. And it's perfect, and it's got a hollow F-hole cut out. And that's what's cool about a guy like Jay Black. He builds things that are spot on perfect, and he also builds things that are like quirky and fun and entertaining, and that's what's really cool. When the guitar is too adult for me, I can't deal with it. That's when I give it a new paint job and then I go, okay, yeah, nice.
This particular body that I have right here is I'm holding for Cheryl Crow. She had someone in her organization bring her original 59 Telecaster Custom in.
I have pretty small hands, and the The 60s telly that I have is just perfect.
So I had to document the guitar in about a 6-hour period, and I had to weigh different bodies, do a tone tap, which is a comparison type thing, and you tap on her original body, you tap on this body, and this is what I felt came the closest to it as far as weight and the tap went.
So it's hard to put a finger on it. You know, I don't know if it's all about the shape of the neck, although I like the V shape.
I take a profile of the neck and measure from front to back. This profile, I just kind of bend solder around a particular fret at a given point, and that gives me the profile that she's looking for.
I think when you hear it and when you feel it vibrating in your chest or your stomach, you know.
From the beginning, guitar players would come in and say, I'd like to see this kind of detail. Here's a little modification of the design that I'd like to see. And the factory would endeavor to meet those needs.
The string bender, or B-string bender, is a mechanical device that attaches to the guitar strap.
With a string bender right here. It raises the second string up a whole tone. So you get that. Pretty sick idea, but it works. I love the sparkle finish. Maybe an ice blue with, you know, this a little of this and that. That'd be great.
So basically what this ended up doing for me is like offering me my favorite Strat sounds, which are like the neck pickup and then that mechanical phase sound that you get by engaging the middle and the bridge pickups together. And then the other three sounds are the ones that are on the telly anyway. The Helicasters, we do everything, you know, we do country, blues, rock, a little bit of jazz too. And it's nice to have a really versatile guitar. What I like about the Fender guitar is that it's got a very distinctive tone, and every string has its own character. The magic sound everyone buys tellies for.
The president, Bill Schultz, wanted to produce archtop guitars in the custom shop. It's called the Diaquisto, and there's two models. This happens to be the Elite. It's a 16-inch by 19.5-inch body, jazz-style guitar, single humbucking pickup in the neck position, and it's all flame maple with a spruce top, ebony fingerboard bridge. It comes in sunburst or natural, and it's done on a very small production, custom orders only.
Some of the other product, like the Robin Ford that we're doing now, the carb tops, or the set neck tellies and strats that we build. What that is again, preparing the market, you know, if trends shift. Constantly pushing the envelope, constantly developing new abilities. That's what the custom shop's about too, besides just making one-offs, is to kind of push that envelope. You know, we also are R&D. I mean, we do the research and development too. Fender never did glue-on necks, okay? Well, now we can, and we came up with a great way to do it, and we got a patent on it, and it's a Fender guitar.
This is the Robin Ford signature model. Basically, there's two models. This happens to be the Ultra model, which is a semi-hollow body. What the deal is, actually all around this whole outside is completely hollow with a center solid block just going through here and stopping right at the tailpiece, leaving all the rest of this completely hollow. So they just get a really nice, warm, sweet tone, and plus it keeps them light too. But the thing that's different about these compared to the majority of Fenders is that it's got a set neck and also the tilted peg head up here, which is really kind of abnormal for most Fenders. So it's been kind of a bit of a trial project and just taking on a new task for Fender.
Come up with a design that's done on the NC with a computer program. Steve Bollinger, one of our engineers, and I came up with this, and it's made in two pieces, It's all solid wood, routed out in a pattern with internal chambers for the passage of air and sound vibration and so forth.
Fred came to me with a raw drawing. Basically, this is what I want to do. Okay, let me get in here on the computer, and I figured, let's move this a little bit, move this a little bit, and this will never do it. Fool around with it. And next day, we were cutting one out. Yeah. My computer will feed along a wire right into this, so I can make up a program on my computer, feed it to this, come out here, set up my depths, hit the machine, and it'll cut it. And it's a great tool for prototyping. When we were doing the Urge bass, we went through in, I think it was about 3 days, we went through 13 different iterations of that body. And I made a prototype for each one right off this machine. And basically I just went in and we changed it the way he wanted to see it, and I made a program up, shot it down to here, put the thing on, turned on the vacuum, cut the thing out, there you go.
First of all, R&D stands for research and development. In a lot of industries, companies, there's more research than there may be the development side of it. But for us, because guitarists are pretty conservative, they may spike their hair and dye it blue, but when it comes to what they play, they seem to be playing things that were designed in the 40s and 50s. What we do is we do a lot of refinement or development. We actually do about 13 to 15 projects a year, and the majority of those projects have to do with refining existing product. In fact, a recent thing that we just did involved the Telecaster. This is the Tele Plus. What was involved with this project is we added binding to the top, which the Telecaster normally doesn't have. There has been binding on teles in the past, but this still is not the normal way that people are used to seeing teles. We added a contour to the back, which is like what you'd find on a Stratocaster. This has 3 pickups instead of the 2 that the Telecaster normally has. The pickups are lace sensors. We spent a good deal of time refining the sound of these till we had them the way that we felt most Telecaster players would like them best. And that's pretty much it for this type of a project. Now, a project like this generally takes us between the design of the product itself, the pickups, the bridge that we used, and the documentation for the product. This generally takes us about 6 months.
You know, the tone of a Fender guitar is really a fascinating thing to think about, I think, and it's almost a paradox because on the one hand, it is a distinctive sound. The Stratocaster, for example, has a distinctive sound. In fact, it has several distinctive sounds. When you hear it, you kind of know what you're hearing. On the other hand, there is a tremendous versatility and adaptability in this guitar and in other Fenders, and I think that's a big part of the success too. I mean, consider the fact that the Stratocaster was the right guitar for Buddy Holly and also for Jeff Beck, that it was the right guitar for the guy in Lawrence Welk's band and also the guy in Pink Floyd.
This front pickup, you get a sort of fat kind of sound for the lower strings and everything, and it's close to the neck, so it's going to be very similar to the same way that if on a classical guitar, if you play close to the neck and in front of the sound hole, it's a warmer, bassier kind of sound. So that's what happens with these kind of pickups. You'll get a softer, kind of more bassy sound.
In the middle is just the middle pickup alone, and it's probably the most neutral sound of the guitar. It's just in the center of the string. It's not too bassy, it's not too trebly, it's a good all-round setting. So it's warm, and it's got the high end too.
Same for this pickup selector. You're going to get a brighter sound even still between these two, but it's again a sort of in-between sound, so you get that honk comes back again.
Moving up one, you get a sound that players in the past used to have to jiggle the switch and just find the spot where you would catch the 2 pickups. Nowadays they have the notch in it, and that sound is kind of a quacky sound. I think Eric Clapton is associated with it a lot, and Mark Knopfler, but it kind of...
So you have all of these characteristics at your disposal, whereas, like we were saying, on a piano, you can hit one note, you got your choice of hard or harder. You know, that's it.
The Fender sound basically is the twang sound. It's got a bit more metallic quality than some of the shorter scale guitars. It's a longer scale, 25.5-inch scale versus the shorter 24.5, 24 3/4 scales, and that were more traditional in electric guitars. And this is basically the scale of a full-size acoustic guitar. It's got just a twangier sound.
A lot of guitars sound very, very thin in that bridge position, you know. And I think Leo just paid special attention to that and compensated by having wider bobbin, more winds, brass plate underneath, the surrounding metal plate, all of it to give it a lot more punch and sustain, and it's just very... It just gives it a very distinctive sound.
You start with the scale length. That determines the tone of the guitar. After you have the scale length established, then the wood's in the guitar, whether you use ash in the body or alder in the body, and how that wood sounds musically, which is just from experience of cutting X amount of wood and putting it together, determines the tone of the guitar. After that, the fingerboard, which is this area here, either is maple, rosewood, ebony, palfaro, a variety of woods, then determines the tone of the guitar. So the guitar as a fundamental musical piece starts with the scale length, which determines the string sound of the guitar, and then the woods that are incorporated into the guitar.
A really heavy guitar can be a nightmare to play if you're going to be standing up all night and playing it, but it can have an awesome sound to it because it will have more warmth and depth and sustain, and you feel like, yeah, I'm connected to that tree. You know, and whereas something that's really light might feel like it's, you know, a little bit tighter or have a little bit of a spank to it, and you know, that's what Strats are really good for.
One of the coolest things about the Fender sound is, I mean, even though it's a very specific tone or very specific type of sound, very easily identifiable, one of the things the players like best about the Fender sound or Fender guitar is they put their personality in it to get the specific tone. You know what I mean? And that's what they like about it the most. And so try to define what the tone is, I can't. You know what I mean? What I do know about the Fender tone is it allows the player to come through it. It allows the player to sculpt it. So even though it's obviously a Fender, it's also obviously Clapton, or it's obviously Beck, or it's obviously Bunny Raitt, or it's obviously Elliot Easton. You know what I mean? And that's the most important thing about the Fender tone.
The new owners of Fender faced many obstacles in reinvigorating the company and reinstating the great name of Fender, and they met that challenge. And now, the legend of Fender is for the historians, but the legacy of Fender, the instruments, those are for the guitar players of today and tomorrow. This is Tom Wheeler for the American Guitar Series.
It's got a sound to it.